The day your accounts cross $100,000, you're going to feel something. A little click in your chest. Relief. Pride. The quiet thought that you finally made it. Hold on to that feeling for a second because I need to tell you the truth about it. That first 100 grand is the most dangerous money you will ever hold. Not because it's small. Because of what it does to your head the moment you see it. You spent years clawing your way to it. Skipped trips, drove the old car, said no to things you wanted. And the second the number turns over, a voice shows up and says, "Okay, you can relax now. You earned a break." That voice is going to cost you. For a lot of people, it quietly costs them their best decade of growth and a number with 2 more zeros on the end. So before you exhale and coast, let me show you exactly where that feeling goes wrong and how to keep the thing you just built from going cold. If you've ever stared at your savings app doing math in your head, wondering if you're behind, stick with me. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which side of the line you're standing on and what the line even is. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Getting to 100,000 and keeping 100,000 growing are 2 completely different skills. One is about grit, the other is about not flinching. And the second one is where almost everybody slips. Think about what it actually took to get there. Every dollar came from you. Your paycheck, your discipline, your saying no. You were carrying the whole thing on your back, uphill, with nothing helping you. That's why it felt so slow. For most of that climb, your money wasn't really working yet. You were. Charlie Munger, the investor who spent decades next to Warren Buffett, put it bluntly at a 1999 shareholder meeting. He said the hard part for most people is the first 100,000. From a standing start at zero, he called it a long struggle. He wasn't being dramatic. He was describing the exact uphill you're on right now. Let me show you what that 100,000 actually unlocks, because this is the part that changes everything. Picture a fire. For the first hour, you're crouched over a tiny pile of tinder in the wind, striking match after match, cupping your hands around a flame that keeps almost dying. That's you, saving your first 100 grand. Exhausting? Slow? Every bit of heat is coming from your own effort. Then something shifts. The fire catches. It starts throwing its own heat. The logs you add now don't just sit there, they ignite on their own. You're not striking matches anymore. You're feeding something that's finally burning on its own power. That's what $100,000 does. At a long-term average return of around 7%, which is a common planning estimate, not a promise, your 100,000 earns roughly $7,000 a year on its own. Sit with that, 7 grand. For a lot of people, that's close to what they spent a whole year sweating to save by hand. Your money just matched a year of your effort, and it did it while you slept. This is the line. On one side, you are the engine. On the other side, your money is. 100,000 is roughly where the engine quietly switches over. And that is exactly why walking away at this moment is such a trap. The fire just caught. It is not a bonfire yet. It needs years of you simply not letting it go out. So here's where most people get it wrong. They hear the second half of Munger's advice. The part where he says after the first 100,000 you can ease off the gas a little, and they hear permission to stop. Ease off the gas does not mean park the car. But that's how the brain translates it the second the pressure lifts. Here's what easing off actually means, done right. It means you can stop white-knuckling every single dollar. You can let a little air back into your life. Take the trip. Fix the thing you've been ignoring. What it does not mean is shutting off the contributions that keep the fire fed. Easing off the gas is not the same as cutting the fuel line. Munger eased off. He never stopped saving. The people who get burned are the ones who hear the word relax and quietly delete the one habit that built the whole thing. Let me make the trap concrete with 2 people. Same age, same 100,000, 2 different endings. You hit the number and you keep doing exactly what got you here. Same savings rate, same boring automatic transfer every payday. You don't get fancy. You just keep feeding the fire. Now meet Avi. Ava hits 100,000 the same month you do. And Ava decides she's arrived. She upgrades the car because she deserves it. The apartment, the vacations, the little daily stuff. Her spending climbs to match her income, and her saving quietly stops. She's not reckless. She just eased off the gas and never touched it again. 3 years later, you've both still got that original 100 grand. But yours has been compounding and getting fed. Hers has been sitting there alone while she spends every new dollar. The gap between you is already wide, and it's the kind of gap that only grows. There's a name for what happened to Ava. It's called lifestyle creep, and the psychology behind it is the hedonic treadmill, the way any upgrade feels amazing for a month and then becomes your boring new normal, so you reach for the next one. It is not weakness, it is human wiring. And it eats raises and milestones alive. How real is it? A 2025 Goldman Sachs report found that 40% of households earning $500,000 or more still felt like they were living paycheck to paycheck, $500,000 a year, and still stretched. That is lifestyle creep at the top of the income ladder. If it can swallow a $500,000 income, it can absolutely swallow your first $100,000 the moment you decide you've made it. And it hides in small, reasonable-sounding numbers. According to Empower's 2025 spending data, the average American's food delivery habit ran about $179 a month. That's roughly $2,150 a year. Fed into your fire instead, at that same 7% estimate, that one habit could grow to somewhere in the ballpark of $200,000 over 30 years. One delivery app. The point isn't to never order dinner. It's that the small leaks are exactly what flood in the second you decide the hard part is over. And the small stuff is only half of it. The bigger leak is the raise, the promotion, the bonus you finally get a year or two after you hit the milestone. That's the real test, and almost nobody passes it on purpose. Say you land a $6,000 raise after taxes. Broken down by paycheck, it feels like almost nothing. A couple $100? Easy to fold into nicer dinners and a slightly bigger apartment. But fed into the fire at that same 7% estimate, that one raise, kept up across the rest of your career, can be the difference between retiring on time and retiring years early. The milestone doesn't decide your future. What you do with the very next raise after it does. So how do you actually keep your hands off this for 10 years? You don't rely on willpower. You make the decision once and then take yourself out of it. You automate it. The transfer leaves your checking account the day you get paid, before you ever see it or feel it, and it lands in a low-cost index fund, which is just a single boring basket that owns a sliver of hundreds of America's biggest companies at once. You're not betting on one stock. You're betting on the whole fire staying lit, out of sight, out of reach, growing in the background while you live your life. The people who keep their fire burning aren't tougher than you in the moment. They just removed the moment. They made not flinching the default. Now let me hit you with the number that should make you feel good because you've earned it. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, the median net worth for Americans under 35 was about $39,000. Median. That's the middle of the pack. So if you're under 35 and sitting on $100,000, you are not behind. You are roughly 2.5 times the typical person your age. You are quietly ahead of most people you know, including the ones with the nicer car. For perspective, the median net worth across all American families was about $192,900 in that same survey. And most of those families are decades older than you. You're not late. You got the fire lit early, and an early start is the one advantage money genuinely cannot buy back later. But here's the honest catch, and I'd rather you hear it from me. 100,000 is not what it used to be. When Munger first talked about that number in the late 1990s, 100 grand had the buying power of roughly $200,000 today, going by the Consumer Price Index. So the finish line you pictured has been quietly moving the whole time you were running at it. That's not a reason to feel cheated. It's the reason the next part matters so much. Because if the target keeps moving, the only thing that outruns it is the fire. Compounding doesn't care about inflation's head start the way you do. Given enough time, it laps it. But only if you keep it lit. Here's the moment everything turns. I want you to really see it. There's a rule called the Rule of 72. Take 72, divide it by your return. And that's roughly how many years your money takes to double. At about 7%, that's roughly every 10 years. So, watch what your 100,000 does if you just refuse to put it out. Year 0, you've got 100,000. 10 years later, untouched and still fed a little, it's roughly 200,000. 10 years after that, around 400,000. Without you working any harder. The boulder you shoved uphill for years is finally at the top, and it's starting to roll down the easy side. And it doesn't stop at one double. Leave it alone long enough, and that 400,000 drifts toward 800,000, then 7 figures, on the same boring autopilot. The first 100 took you years of sweat. The second 100 takes the fire about a decade and almost none of your effort. The third takes even less. That's the cruel, beautiful asymmetry nobody explains to you up front. The hardest dollar you will ever save is one of your first. The easiest is one of your last. And here's the part that lands like a punch. The single most powerful stretch of your entire money life is not the years you spent grinding to 100 grand. It's the decade right after. That's when the fire does the heaviest lifting it will ever do. 100 becomes 200, not because you hustled, but because you didn't walk away. So picture what Ava did. At the exact moment the fire finally caught, she stopped feeding it and turned to spend her new income instead. She didn't blow up her life. She just let the most important decade she'll ever have slip by lukewarm. Run it forward and the math stings. Your Fed fire is pushing toward 200,000 by the end of that decade. Hers, parked while she spent every raise around it, has barely moved. Same starting 100 grand, same 10 years, and the gap between you is a 6-figure canyon. Not because she failed, because she relaxed at the worst possible moment. That is the real cost of I made it. Not a dramatic crash. A quiet decade of almost nothing when it could have been everything. You don't have to do anything heroic to win this. You just have to not flinch. Keep the automatic transfer running. Let the index fund sit. Let the boring keep being boring. The grind already happened. Now the job is simply to guard the fire while it grows. And this is where the money stops being about money. Because somewhere in that decade, you stop being the person who's scared of their bank account. You become the person who isn't. The one who can take the call about a layoff and not feel their stomach drop. Because there's a fire in the corner throwing off heat no matter what the week looks like. That's the real thing you're building. Not a number you screenshot. A version of you that sleeps through the financial storms that wreck everyone else. Walking away power. The quiet confidence of someone who knows the hard part is behind them and refuses to undo it. You don't buy that with $100,000. You buy it by keeping the 100,000 alive long enough to become something that protects you. And here's what surprises people. Once the fire is throwing real heat, the fear you carried for years starts to fade on its own. You stop refreshing the app. You stop doing the anxious mental math at 2 a.m. The boring automatic transfer keeps running. The index fund keeps doing its thing. And you slowly become the person at the dinner table who isn't secretly stressed about money. Not because you got rich. Because you stopped putting out your own fire every time it got going. That shift, from white knuckle to calm, is the actual prize. The number is just the receipt. So let me be straight with you, the honest version. 100,000 at 30 and 100,000 at 55 are not the same thing, because the younger one has more time for the fire to spread, and time is the whole game. And no, your 100 grand is not a yacht. It won't make you feel rich tomorrow. Anyone selling you that is lying. What it is proof. Proof that you can save, that the engine has switched over, and that the most powerful decade of your life is sitting right in front of you, unspent. That's worth more than the feeling of being rich. None of this is financial advice, just the math and the psychology laid side by side. The danger was never that 100,000 is too little. The danger is that it feels like enough at exactly the moment it needs you most. The number on your screen doesn't know how old you are or how long you've got. You do. Treat it like a fire that just caught, not a finish line, and that single belief is worth more than the 100,000 itself. So tell me where you actually are right now, still grinding toward that first 100 grand, just crossed it, or already watching the fire take off. Drop your number in the comments, I read them, and there's a whole comment section down there of people on the exact same climb. If this showed you something about your money you hadn't framed that way before, subscribe and stay close. We do the math nobody taught you, the plain way, every single week. And the next time that little voice says you've made it and you can relax, ask it one question. At what age? Because 100,000 you walk away from is a milestone. 100,000 you keep feeding is a machine. Knowing the difference is the whole thing.